Hi, so today is day 13 of Sam's Advent Calendar. Day 12 was a difficult one because with the election and politics. So for day 12, I thought I'll leave it off social media and I just spent a little bit of time having a look back at some of our memories and the diary that I wrote for Sam. So day 12 of Sam's Advent Calendar was about me spending a bit of time with Sam. And day 13, I thought today we'll have a look at one of the children's stories. I'll read out one of the children's stories that I wrote some years ago. So this story was written after I lost the baby after Sam. I'd written a number of Christmas stories, and it was really it was in hope that at that point I hadn't given up hope of being a mum. So this particular story is called But I Want to Be a Christmas Fairy. In Wallowy Wood, the school bell rang, and as assembly started, the children sang. They sang their songs so very proud, not all in tune and a bit too loud, but they did their best and with all their heart, until it was time for lessons to start. Now, Wallowy Wood is a special school. Not one you'd know, it has special rules. Not everyone is allowed to attend. There's a long waiting list for parents to send their precious children to have this chance to read and write and sing and dance. The rules are strict and in big, bold writing. This learning experience is very exciting, but before you fill in the form, be wary. You will only be accepted if you are a fairy. You see, Wallowy Wood is the only school for fairies to gain all the tools they need to follow their chosen career. They're selected for roles in November at the end of each year. Now, all the youngsters have their choice, but in the end it's the teacher's voice that decides which way each fairy will go. When it comes to decisions, the teacher knows where each fairy with their talents best fits, whether it's wishes or teeth or with flowers they sit. There is one job, though, fairies dream to do. It's like being a footballer or a pop star for me or you. The job is held in such high esteem. All fairies know how much it means. The chances are small and the prospects are scary, but how they all longed to be a Christmas fairy. Now, this year's class was split in two, as there were far too many for Mrs. Pugh. Numbers seemed to grow each year, so this year there was a new teacher called Mr. Cheer. Now, Mrs. Pugh was tall and thin. She had a pointy nose and a hairy chin. She was quite old and wore thick glasses and taught all the fairies their theory classes. This meant reading, writing, science and history, as well as maths and the art of fairy mystery. Mr. Cheer was bald and had a big laugh. He taught the fairies their practical class. This involved granting wishes and learning to fly, making potions and spells for young fairies to try. Now, singing and dancing was also a must, and learning how to use fairy dust. There were lots of things for them to learn, but fairy wings were not easy to earn. Most fairies worked hard and kept their heads down, but as we all know, there's always one clown. In this year's class, his name was Billy. He was rude and loud and very silly. Billy was capable of getting straight A's, but it was much more fun to play silly games. He would change his classmates into squirrels and frogs and spread glue where they sat on the painted logs. He would add chili powder to the cupcake mix. He had more than 1,000,000 naughty tricks. When it came to parents' night that year, Billy's parents just wept and shed many tears. "But what are we going to do with him?" sobbed Billy's mum. "His future looks dim." "Well, it is if he doesn't pull up his socks. He'll end up as a cleaning fairy polishing rocks. But don't despair," said Mr. Cheer. "Work experience week is drawing near." I have an idea that I can try, so Mrs. Worthing, please don't cry. I will keep you posted on how it goes. It may just work. Whoever knows? Mr. Cheer announced the very next day that work experience was only a few weeks away. He went round the class asking their ideal jobs. I think this time we'll start with Bob. Bob stood up. He found talking scary and quietly said, I want to be a tooth fairy. Then Mary stood and stretched her wings. I would like to work on the fairy rings. I'd like to be a flower fairy best, said Etty, and there were many agreeing shouts from the rest. I want to be a Christmas fairy, I really do, said the hardest working fairy, Polly Sue. Well, thank you, that's great. I've made a note. I will do my best. Now please get your coats. We're going out for our flying test. We'll see who's practised and who's the best. But Mr. Cheer, you didn't ask me what I wanted to do. It's okay, Billy. I already have something for you. But Mr. Cheer, you don't know what I want, said Billy, coming right up to the front. Honestly, Billy, you'll be fine. I have put you in a job with a friend of mine. I'm sure you'll love it. It's what you're aiming for. Now, come on, boy, out of the door. The list went up on the classroom wall. It was an excited scramble from them all to see where they would be spending their week. They were all so desperate to have a peek. There were so many squeaks and whoops of joy, except from Billy, whose placement just said, Mr. Roy. You okay, Billy? Asked Mr. Cheer. Well, I don't understand what's written here. It just says, Mr. Roy. What does that mean? Ah, Billy, yours is special. Just wait and see. Billy smiled a big smile at Mr. Cheer. Just the kind of thing he liked to hear. Billy, meet me on Monday by the school gate. I'll take you to your placement. Don't be late. So Monday came and they left together. Flying was hard in the wintry weather. They flew through the woods and out to town. By now the snow was really coming down. The shops had started preparing for Christmas. There was trees and tinsel and all that business. They were suddenly stopped on the corner of the street, and there was a young fairy waiting to meet Billy to welcome him as one of the boys to do work experience at Big Roy's Toys. Cool, exclaimed Billy as he saw the sign. Work experience in a toy shop? That'll be fine. The youngest fairy who met them glimpsed at Mr. Cheer. Right, okay, Billy, well, I will leave you here. I hope you have fun on your very first day. Toodle pip for now. And Mr. Cheer flew away. All right, mate, I'm Fred. Welcome to your first day. If you want to follow me, we need to go this way. They went down the alley at the side of the shop until Fred waved his arms to signal Billy to stop. They went through a door that said, Testing, beware. There were flashes and bangs, and Billy just stared. Here you go, Billy, we're working in here. It was dingy and dark, and the light wasn't clear. But aren't I working in the toy shop itself? Oh no, chuckled Fred. That's reserved for the elf. So what do I do? Asked Billy, his smile gone. Don't worry, said Fred. Just put these safety goggles on. So Billy went in and did what Fred said, with his safety goggles and hard hat for his head. Just wait a minute, I'll be right back. And Fred came back with a big full sack. Please, Fred, will you tell me what my job will be? Just hang on a sec, mate. You'll soon see. At the back of the shop was the toy testing room. And then from behind him there was a loud boom. What was that? Asked Billy in fear. The horrible sound was a little too near. Well, before all the toys can enter the shop, they have to be tested so that we can stop any faulty toys getting onto the shelf to be sold to children by the Christmas elf. Our department is tricks, so it's our job to test all of the tricks so that we can make sure they're the best and safe for the children to have fun with and play before they're sold and taken away. We needed a tester to test all the tricks, from whoopee cushions and magic pens to exploding bricks. Mr. Cheer spoke to Big Roy, said you'd be great. So come on, let's get started. There's a lot to do, mate. Very unsure, Billy sat on the chair and was narrowly missed as something flew through the air. Trick after trick was tried out on Billy. He was beginning to feel very silly. There was a handshake shocker that worked too well, and a whoopee cushion that gave an awful smell. The faulty mud pie that was just too runny. Really, this job just was not very funny. At break time, Billy cried, "This isn't for me." His hair stood on end and you could hardly see his face for all the custard and mud, and his fingers were stuck in the trick glue pud. "Really, I'm sorry, I can't take any more." And Billy flew out through the black back door. He flew back to school, his eyes full of tears. "Please, I can't do it. Don't make me, Mr. Cheer." Mr. Cheer sat with Billy and looked very stern. "Billy, this was an important lesson for you to learn. Firstly, you now see how it feels for the fairies when you play constant tricks on Bob and Mary. But most important is the lesson for you. Without education, what do you think you will do? Because that will be the only job left for you to choose, and in the end it will be you that will lose." "But Mr. Cheer," Billy sobbed, his eyes all starey, "all I want is to be a Christmas fairy. I'm sorry I wasted so much of your time and upset the others. I now see my crime. I've done now, and I really want to change. Please, Mr. Cheer, is it possible to arrange for me to spend my working week here, making amends and ensuring a career in the field that I want? I will up all my grades. I will resit my work if it isn't too late." "Well, Billy Worthing, you have a lot to do. But yes, I have every faith in you." Billy sat in school from morn till night. All of that week, all he did was write. When he went home at the end of the day, he binned all his tricks and was heard to say, "Mum, is there anything I can do for you?" And everyone was astonished by this new Billy Worthing and his new change of life. Never again would he get into strife. The final day at Wallowy Wood, all the fairies were dressed in their best gowns and hoods. The parents were sat so very proud, and finally it was time for Mrs. Pugh to announce out loud the chosen career paths for all of the class. There was absolute silence to see if they'd pass all the tests and achieve their job choice, so all of their families could rejoice. As she read the list and each fairy came up to collect their wings and achievement cup, there were cheers and claps and shouts of joy for all the happy girls and boys. Now, as a Worthing, Billy had a long wait. He sat pale and scared in case it had been too late to change his ways and knuckle down. He held his breath and waited without a sound. And now we come to Billy Worthing. Please stand. I want you all to give a very big hand. Despite a poor start, this boy came good and has achieved the highest grades ever seen at Wallowy Wood. So I could not be more proud to say that Billy will now be going away to train with the best at Scarton Larry. to be our first ever Christmas fairy. 3 years on and a long way away, in a pretty little cottage on Christmas Day, 3 young children were running round, excited at all the presents they'd found. After Santa's visit on Christmas Eve, none of them could quite believe how lucky they'd been, and were shouting with joy at all the amazing and beautiful toys, but happiest of all at what he could see was their newly chosen fairy on the Christmas tree. Billy had achieved his incredible dream. He felt like the cat that had got the cream. Happy Christmas to all on Christmas Day. Just something first Billy would like to say. At Christmas time, dreams can come true, but sometimes dreams are down to you. If you ever consider turning your friends into frogs or gluing them to wooden logs, think of me at Big Roy's Toys and then forget about playing tricks on other girls and boys. Just work hard. It really isn't that scary. Maybe you could even be a Christmas fairy.